Mr Speaker, I arrived in Wellington 14 years ago looking to find my feet. I'd grown up largely in Dunedin in the cloak of a Presbyterian family where my parents, who are here today, raised me and my two brothers to believe that we are all created equal, to treat others as we wish to be treated, and to work hard for our goals. They gave us love and support and allowed us to dream but be practical, and I thank them for that. I was interested in politics from an early age. Not, however, as early as my colleague Darren Hughes, whose first words as a baby, I understand, were Mr Speaker. My political consciousness grew around some key events. I swelled with pride and too many sausage rolls from the school canteen, and as I saw David Lange on television at the Oxford Union debate. Not only could an overweight guy with glasses succeed, but New Zealand could stand up to world powers, hell-bent on destroying each other and us in the process. I was proud then of our independent stance on the world stage, and I was proud to play my part in later years working at MFAT and representing New Zealand at the UN in New York. Through the late 1980s and into the 1990s, I became distressed at the direction I saw government take. The unfettered, market-knows-best, laissez-faire, user-pays philosophy did untold damage to my community. At the supermarket where I worked to pay my way through school and university, the Employment Contracts Act arrived in 1991. I experienced firsthand our penal rates disappear, our conditions lost, and the value of our wages sink. I have never forgotten the impact of that law on working New Zealanders, and I have worked ever since to support the rights of workers. At university, I became involved in the fight against user pays in education. I ended up as the student president at Otago and in turn here in Wellington for NZUSA. I learned a great deal as a student politician. I learned to organise, I learned to campaign, and I learned what it meant to stand up for what you believe in. After one particularly rowdy but peaceful protest, I was accused by a policeman of being the biggest quasi-terrorist in Dunedin. I told him I was trying to lose weight. But above all, I learned that it is education that will make the difference to people achieving their potential in life. Peter Fraser and Clarence Beebe laid out the vision for the state's role in education in 1939. I quote, "The government's objective broadly expressed is that every person, whatever his level of academic ability, whether he be rich or poor, whether he live in town or country, has a right, as a citizen, to a free education of the kind for which he is best fitted and to the fullest extent of his powers." Close quote. While much of this has changed in intervening years, Fraser and Beebe's vision is the one that I come to Parliament determined to develop and make real for the 21st century. Mr Speaker, we have a great education system in New Zealand, staffed by dedicated professionals. We must build on that to ensure that it provides the basis for a strong, inclusive society going forward. There is not enough time today to talk about all the areas where we can work on this, but I want to make mention of one in particular. The current arrangements for the funding of special needs education need an urgent and serious review. While successive governments have put more money into this area, I know of parents that are still going through extreme stress to get the resources they are entitled to, and in some cases those resources are not sufficient. The Education Act says that every child in New Zealand has a right to an education. We have a responsibility to make that real. Mr Speaker, my vision for making real the ideals of social justice that I spoke of earlier is a vision for a modern, inclusive New Zealand, where we equip our people with the skills and knowledge to succeed in an ever-globalising world. A New Zealand where we celebrate and promote diversity, and where we truly are our brother and sisters' keepers. The solutions and ways to achieve this will not all be found in Wellington or in government. My generation of politicians must be open to a range of potential solutions. They'll be found in our communities and our families, on marae and in workplaces. It is the job of government and politicians in general to bring those together and provide leadership and support. I want to help build a modern, inclusive New Zealand where we do not accept children growing up in poverty. I believe that we should set goals to eliminate poverty in New Zealand and work out a program of redistribution that will see incomes and spirits lift together. A modern, inclusive New Zealand also needs to be one that looks after our environment. The health of our natural environment is critical not only to our way of life, but also to our economy. If we want people to stay in New Zealand, we need clean water to swim in and clean air to breathe. If we want carbon-conscious consumers across the world to buy our goods, or tourists spoiled for choice to choose to come here, then we need to be able to show that our 100% pure, clean, green image is a reality, and sadly, in many cases, it is not. A modern, inclusive New Zealand will be one where we do not build more jails, but where we work with and across communities to ensure that people do not end up in prison in the first place. A modern, inclusive New Zealand needs to ensure that we acknowledge the place and role of Māori in New Zealand as tangata whenua and the Treaty of Waitangi. I would like to promote one small step in that regard. I believe that te reo Māori should be taught in all schools for all pupils up until at least age 14. Learning a language is one of the keys to understanding a culture, and in this case, it's our own culture. This is one small step that we could take to build a more harmonious society. A modern, inclusive New Zealand will harness the best of being a Pacific nation. The emerging Pacifica communities in New Zealand need to be supported and developed, and those communities will also play an important role in New Zealand's place as a peacemaker and conflict resolver in our region. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, quite simply the reason I entered the political arena is because of my belief in social justice. My desire is to play a part in making my community, city, country and world a fairer and more equal place, because it is that equality that will drive aspiration, opportunity and success for all. In my time in this Parliament, it is my commitment that I will work to build an ever better, fairer New Zealand, where we seek to ensure that achieving your potential is not just the preserve of the privileged, but possible for all. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia kaha, tēnā koutou katoa.
Point of order, Chris.